a weird thing to say like, hey, things are going really well at my job. I'm miserable. Like that's just not a common thing that you're open and want to admit or say, or can even really ask for help about.
Okay, you mentioned something a moment ago. I think it's really important as an entrepreneur, and I think many people can relate to it. You said you feel like you were kind of getting bored, and so you look for something else. I have a great friend years ago used to talk about how so often when we as entrepreneurs get distracted or go to look open, and it's because we're bored with what we're doing and not and taking kind of our eyes off the prize for a second, and then trying to find something else that might be faster, easy, better. What are you doing now that you've gone through that experience and now you're back in the world? And I say back, but you're reigniting, I guess, in the world again of venture capital. What are you doing to stave off the boredness or the boredom? Is it the podcast?
No, actually, it's not.
Oh,
It's
okay.
that helps, sure, but I will also say it's a bit of a hobby. I think one of the things I realized in going through all this is that you need to one experiment. You need to see what you want to do, what you're good at. I think I didn't. I reached a plateau where I wasn't getting. I didn't know what my goal was within the industry that I was in, and I think that was the challenge.
Wow.
And what
Good
happened to
insight.
me, and I noticed it happened to others too, is you start a new job, everything's new, you're brand new, you're learning, you're constantly you're trying to figure this out. It could be a new business, whatever it is, but eventually, hopefully, if you succeed, you start to get comfortable, you get good at it, and you need new challenges to find. And if you can't find those challenges within work, you start looking abroad. You start going to the gym a lot, you start like really worrying about your lawn or something. You just let me go make new friends or get a new hobby. And so because you need to be growing, and that's what happened to me. I need to do it. And so now what I realized is I need to channel that. I do need to always be thinking about, okay, what is the next thing? And so, now I have picked some new avenues that I'm trying to go down. I'm trying to, I was a lot more of a call it an executor. So I would kind of make a deal happen, but I was a lot less relationship focused. And so
Mm.
now a big part of my role is building relationships and really trying to build these relationships where people will then trust me with their business to sell it and hire me and become a client of mine, which is a new challenge, and it's hard. And I'm fairly young to have someone actually do that and be comfortable with it. And so, to me, that's my new challenge, but it's controlled. I understand it. I get that. I had to kind of go through though all this stuff to really
Right.
figure out that that's what I needed. So
Well, I think that's so insightful, right? We often do need to go through things, try things out, and trying different jackets to see what fits or what doesn't fit. And then what I love too about your story is the ability to pivot and say, you know what? Okay, this isn't working out. Obviously, COVID, but who knows? It could have been something else that was down the line too that you now saw. Okay, well, where was I not, like you said, didn't have a goal? And the last thing, now I got to re engage in my business and find those new goals, find those new ways where I can actually feel satisfied. What is your big goal now?
my big goal is around like it's really helping businesses, helping companies, but building up a reputation and a repertoire around that. And I'm just what's interesting though is I can't even really conceptualize the full goal because I'm so early into it. So it's really like, yeah, I just want to meet a new company and have an impact. I think that is what I've always liked. It's even with the food business that I started, what I sort of wanted to do. I don't necessarily need or feel like I need to be there every day helping a business or helping a company, but I've got a ton of advice and a lot of experience helping with certain advice at certain times. And so I'm trying to put myself in situations where I can do that, where I can help a young entrepreneur, where I can help someone who is sort of struggling with anything, honestly, as it relates to business and career and everything. So that is why I do have the podcast is trying to touch people in that regard, because it is a hard thing to ask for and you don't even necessarily recognize it. It's a weird thing to say like, hey, things are going really well at my job, I'm miserable. Like that's just not a common thing that you're open and want to admit or say or can even really ask for help about. So me being able to see that, to be that advice, to hopefully provide some perspective, I think is my new goal. But it's not fully formed. Like I try to keep them short. We're at like 6 months and increments, and I can pivot to a slightly different goal. So
Well, that's what I was thinking too when you're saying that, was that pivot idea, right? Continuing the pivot idea.
yeah.
So, do you have a specific type of company that you're more focused on now that you maybe wouldn't have thought about before you went through what you did?
Company in terms of who I help or who I
Like client,
target.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, sorry, client, yeah, client.
yeah, no, I mean, so I do a lot of the food world, just
Oh,
nature of it. I had that in the past. I do now. So food in the consumer world. So that's probably my like specialty. But I honestly work across, and you can apply a lot of the same M&A concepts to a lot of others. And I do just am fascinated by companies in a different industry that I don't know and learning about them. So I am trying to and generally open to learning and trying to apply myself in any business. But certainly food just I like very naturally I understand it. I think I have a unique perspective on it because I've like actually worked as a more of an operator and founder in
sure.
that world. So
There you go. There's one of those benefits of maybe something that you try that doesn't work out, but you gain the knowledge from that thing, right? So that's very important. Let's talk a little bit about the podcast and how that came about and what is kind of your point of doing that. You mentioned a few little things there. I'd love to kind of dive deeper into that.
yeah, so it's called Lifetime at Work. I interview business people, professionals, honestly, but of varying professions is the idea. And we talk about the concept of work effectively. And I typically get into the background of the person, but trying to figure out like what drives them, what has work taught them about themselves. And honestly, the rationale and the reason for me starting the podcast in the first place was this idea that we spend a lifetime, we spend so long, we spend so much time at work, and many people just hate it, or they tell us they hate it.
Crazy,
They're,
yeah.
they're super excited when Friday comes and miserable when Monday comes, and I'm like, no, I don't think that has to be it. I actually think that you get a lot of fulfillment out of work if you're in the right mindset, if you can have the right perspective on it. And so I want to instill that upon people. But I'm also fascinated by this idea that people might not be happy, or that they have ulterior interests and motives within their world of work. So that's what I am trying to understand with each interview is getting at that, and understanding, hey, what drives you? What do you like about your job? What do you dislike? What are your goals? That type of stuff.
So if you think back to the podcast, I'm very curious about this then, for the guests that you've had at your podcast, could you just off the top of your head, I know we didn't plan this at a time, but what are like two or three common denominators, common factors that you see with people who are actually fulfilled in their work and in their job?
What are they? So a ton of people have done more than one thing. So they have pivoted at some point.
Yep.
It is very common. I tend to notice it, and it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be like I was an investment banker and then I'm an artist of some sort.
Right.
Like that isn't but it's doing one thing and then realizing and doing another. I think that's incredibly common. The one thing that I've recognized with myself as well is the people component, though, the building of relationships component. I find that people who don't have that can definitely struggle because you're just lonely, I think. And
Yeah.
part of us working and as people, we are trying to connect. And if you can't necessarily do that unless you have a network of some sort. So I definitely do find that where people who have again have a network is good. But it's interesting. Like I get a lot of people who are trying to be on the podcast who just email and say that they want to be on it, and it's those people. They're just, I guess they're happy and they want everyone to know it. Like they're very outward about it, and they're trying to broadcast, hey, here, I found this secret. And in a lot of ways, it's the same stuff. Like it's goals, it's understanding what you're trying to do. It's enjoying what you're doing, enjoying the people you're around. It's being challenged. So a lot of those are very common themes that a lot of people like, and you can't be too afraid, I think, of failing, of something different, because that's important too.
I totally agree. And I think it's interesting finding that fulfillment in your work, the different ways that we all go about doing so. But that relationship piece is so crucial. And it almost seems like, well, duh, this is common knowledge when it comes to that relationship capital. But it is surprising to find so many people who don't invest in that relationship capital. who don't try to figure out how they can more improve the relationships around them, realizing that's probably where they're going to find their next opportunity, their next investment, their next friend, right? So that's really, really important. How long have you been doing your podcast?
Uh, I don't know, a couple years. I'm
Oh,
about
nice.
60 episodes in or
Oh,
so. So
cool.
yeah,
Very good.
yeah,
Yeah. So I love that mine too. It's more like a hobby, almost a service to put stuff out in the world. I don't monetize this. I just want to put the
same.
information out in the world to connect with people and to let them know, hey, you're not alone, right?
Right.
We're out there doing that. Any favorite guests or stories that you can remember? Not, I know they're all your favorite kids, but any favorite guests or stories that you can remember of the show? Hey, there's no reason to learn how to own your role on your own. If you like that clip, go ahead and click right here for another one. Or if you want to watch the entire podcast, go ahead and click right here. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.